be asked to speak on this occasion. But what a daunting challenge and task, knowing all too well that whatever glowing words and flowing phrases that I might choose to utter, they nevertheless will be woefully inadequate to the subject at hand. The luncheon over on the day of my recruitment visit, I was introduced to Paul Sunderland in the hallway that most of us know just outside the boardrooms. And as we shook hands, I recall thinking his hand was bigger, it was thicker than I had anticipated. But as many of you learned before then, and as I was to find out, whether with a paintbrush or garden trowel, working with his beloved dahlias, whether with a stethoscope or scalpel, those were good hands. Skilled, talented, trained hands, caring hands. Ever the gentleman, he apologized for missing lunch. He'd had a woman in labor, and he went on in great detail and with great precision to discuss and describe how the baby's head had turned from occiput posterior to occiput anterior, how it had gone through the usual motions of flexion and extension as it traversed the birth canal. The brash resident that I was thought, oh, this old guy's trying way too hard to impress. Or he's one sharp doc. I think we all know the latter opinion held forth. And while I was excited to join Paul in practice, I was intrigued by the prospect of watching him. This man with so many outside interests, travel and music and gardening, to watch how he would retire. But medicine, particularly family medicine, the way that we practice it, is such a cruel temptress, a mistress, that even he had trouble walking away. You see, all during my medical school years and residency training period, I kept seeing physicians practice far too long, beyond the time where their knowledge had become outdated and stale, and their skills had become eroded. But Paul was different. He had always done quality continuing medical education, and he was diligent in doing his reading. Even as late as a year ago, I found a journal article prominently placed on my desk at the office. One that he had read and thought that I should also. Unlike any of his contemporaries locally and relatively few nationally, he had done the necessary education and had taken a rigorous examination to be a board-certified family physician. And at an age in his mid to late 60s, when most people have retired or it's so close it's all they can think about, he took the exam again and passed. He did so, he explained, because he wanted to prove, referring to Dr. DeLost and I, that he could keep up with the boys. When in reality, it's been the other way around all these years. But after he retired, to me, that's when the real genius of Paul Sunderland became apparent to all. That mind, that beautiful and magnificent mind that served him and his family, this community, and all those patients through 47 years of practice, never even slowed down a bit until 9 days ago. There's a concept, a feeling of healthy aging that says you should remain engaged, mentally engaged, socially engaged. Well, I don't think I've ever seen anyone in advancing years remain as engaged as Paul Sunderland. I'll expect that later. He remained active in this congregation and continued to sing in the church choir. He remained a vigorous member of our local Lions Club and until recently regularly attended meetings and participated in club activities. In his 90s, he agreed to serve a year as tail twister and fulfill those club duties as only he could. Somewhere, surely, the definition of optimist must be the descriptor makes a one-year commitment in your 90s. He worked hard for the hospital foundation, and once he moved full-time into the annex, never missed the opportunity to try to improve the care of his beloved Mildred or the other residents. He remained a strong supporter of the local music club, and just a few weeks ago, after the performance of the Messiah, he was overheard to share his observations with the director. Vintage PW. He was the main organizer and driver of a foundation to rehab houses in this community. And when he told me a few months ago that he believed that would be his last project, I must confess, there was a part of me that truly doubted that that would be the case. A few years ago, he stopped by the office on New Year's Eve. He said that he and Mildred had but one New Year's resolution they were going to make, sensing that he wanted to share, but expecting me to inquire. I obliged. To continue to seek new ways to serve Christ was the response. One of my favorite TV shows of all time is MASH. And early in one episode, Colonel Potter says he likes tomato juice. And so the rest of the show involved Hawkeye and BJ and the gang doing their usual deals and trades and flim-flams, trying to get a case of tomato juice for Colonel Potter. At one point, they needed the help of Father Mulcahy, the chaplain. And when he learned of what the gig was all about, he readily agreed. Colonel Potter, he felt, was a good Christian, yet hardly dull at all. And so in a manner that I believe Paul would appreciate, and a vintage I'm certain he would savor, I propose a toast to Paul Sunderland, my colleague, my partner, my friend, a good Christian, yet hardly dull at all. And the people assembled in unison said,